The emergency alarm screamed through the halls of Coalition Station 7, Admiral. Song Taemin dropped his coffee cup and ran toward the command center. His boots made loud sounds on the metal floor as other officers rushed past him. Something big was happening when Taemin reached the command center. Chaos filled the room. Officers from different alien species worked at their stations with worried faces. The main screen showed a star map with a red dot blinking far out on the galaxy's edge. "What do we have?" Taemin asked his second-in-command, a tall blue alien, named Commander Velox. "Distress signal from Thesha Prime, sir," Velox said. His voice shook a little. "The transmission is disturbing." "Put it through," Taemin ordered. The main screen changed to show a creature that looked like a walking tree. Its bark-like skin was burned and bleeding. Behind it, fires burned in what had once been a beautiful city. The tree being's voice was soft and musical, even through its pain. "This is Elder Miran of the Villani people," the creature said. "We send this message to any who will hear us. The Korath Empire has come to our world. They burn our groves. They take our children. We are a peaceful people. We have no weapons that can stop them." The image shook as explosions sounded in the background. Elder Miran looked directly at the camera with eyes that held both fear and hope. "We know the stories of the Coalition. We know you protect the innocent. Please, if there is mercy in this galaxy, help us. Our cities fall one by one. Soon there will be nothing left of the Villani but memories." The transmission cut to static. The command center fell silent except for the quiet hum of computers. Taemin felt his stomach twist. He had seen Korath attacks before. They were not kind to those they conquered. "How long ago was this sent?" he asked. 4 hours, sir," an officer reported. "The signal took 3 hours to reach us." Taemin closed his eyes. In 1 hour, how many more Villani had died? How many children had been taken as slaves? The Korath Empire was known throughout the galaxy for their cruelty. They did not just conquer worlds, they broke them. "Sir, Commander," Velox said quietly, "the Korath have 30 ships in orbit around Thesha Prime. They have ground forces on every continent. This is a full invasion." Other officers began to speak at once. The Jek's representative, who looked like a living crystal, suggested sending diplomatic messages. The Mirren officer, whose water-filled suit bubbled as he talked, wanted to call an emergency council meeting. The Keth delegate, a being made of pure energy, flickered with worry. "We need to respond carefully," the Jek's officer said. "The Korath Empire is strong. We cannot risk a full war." "But we cannot let them destroy an entire species," the Mirren argued. "The Villani are innocent." Taemin listened to them debate. He had heard these same arguments before. The Coalition was good at many things, but quick action was not one of them. By the time they finished talking, there might be no Villani left to save. "What forces do we have nearby?" Taemin asked. "The nearest Coalition fleet is 6 days away," Velox reported. "But sir, even our full fleet might not be enough. The Korath have been preparing for this attack for months." Taemin walked to the star map. He stared at the red dot that marked Thesha Prime, somewhere on that distant world. Innocent beings were dying while he stood in a safe command center. It made him angry. "There is another option," he said slowly. The room grew quiet. All eyes turned to him. "Sir?" Velox asked. "Earth," Taemin said. "The humans." The reaction was immediate. The crystal being's light dimmed with worry. The water in the Mirren suit bubbled faster. Even the energy creature flickered with what might have been fear. "Admiral," the Jek's officer said carefully, "humans are unpredictable. They come from a deathworld. Their methods are often extreme." "That is exactly why we need them," Taemin replied. "The Korath understand only one language, violence. We need someone who speaks it better than they do." "But sir," the Mirren officer protested, "humans have been Coalition members for only 50 years. We barely understand them. They might do something we regret." Taemin turned to face the room. "Let me tell you what I understand about humans," he said. "Their world tried to kill them every day for millions of years. Ice ages, volcanoes, diseases, predators, everything that could go wrong did go wrong on Earth, and they survived it all. He pointed at the screen showing the burning Villani city. While our species grew up on garden worlds with gentle rains and peaceful animals, humans fought every day just to live. They learned to turn everything into a weapon. They learned to never give up. They learned to protect their own. But the Villani are not human, the Keth delegate pointed out. No, Timon agreed. But humans have a strange idea about who counts as their own. They seem to think it includes anyone who cannot protect themselves. He walked back to his command chair and sat down. Send a message to Earth Defense Command. Tell them we have a situation that requires their special talents. What kind of situation, sir? Velox asked. Tay-Min smiled, but it was not a happy expression. Tell them that someone is hurting innocent people, and they think they can get away with it because those people cannot fight back. Velox's blue skin grew paler. Sir, are you sure about this? Humans in combat are intense. Commander, have you ever seen what the Korath do to their prisoners? Tay-Min asked quietly. No, sir, I have. Trust me when I say that whatever the humans do to the Korath have earned it 10 times over. The message was sent to Earth. While they waited for a response, reports continued to come in from Desha Prime. Another Villani city had fallen. Refugee camps were being attacked. The death count was rising. 2 hours later, the reply came from Earth. It was short and to the point in typical human fashion. We'll handle it. That's it? Velox asked, staring at the message. Just 3 words? Tay-Min nodded. Humans don't waste time with long speeches. When they say they'll handle something, they mean it. What should we tell the other coalition members? An officer asked. Tell them that help is coming, Tay-Min said, and tell them to stay out of the way. As the command center returned to normal operations, Tay-Min stayed in his chair, looking at the star map. Somewhere between Earth and Desha Prime, humans were preparing for war. He had seen human soldiers before during coalition exercises. They moved differently than other species. They seemed to welcome danger rather than avoid it. The Korath Empire thought they were the galaxy's greatest predators. They were about to learn they were wrong. Humans did not just survive their death world, they conquered it. And now they were coming for those who hurt the innocent. Tay-Min felt sorry for the Korath, but only a little. The message from Coalition Station 7 arrived at Seoul Spaceport Command at 0300 hours local time. Colonel Park, So Young, was already awake, drinking coffee and reading reports in her office. She never slept well when the galaxy was quiet. Quiet usually meant someone was planning something terrible. Her computer chimed with an urgent message code. So Young opened it and read the brief text twice. Then she read it a third time to make sure she understood correctly. The Coalition wanted Earth to handle a Korath invasion alone. Interesting, she said to herself. She had heard stories about the Korath Empire. They were the kind of enemy that made other species wake up screaming. Big, brutal, and completely without mercy. They took worlds not just for resources, but for the joy of breaking other civilizations. So Young stood up and walked to her window. Outside, the spaceport was busy even at this early hour. Human ships came and went at all times of day. That was something aliens never understood about humans. They never really stopped working. Sleep was just a brief pause between tasks. She pressed a button on her desk. Get me Lieutenant Commander Kim Woo-jin, Sergeant Major Lee Yu-ri, and Dr. Choi Hae-won. Emergency briefing in 1 hour. Yes, ma'am, her aide replied. Should I prepare Bay 7 for departure? Make it Bay 7, So Young confirmed. And, tell the ground crew to prep the Soul's Fury. We're going hunting. 1 hour later, 4 people sat around a metal table in the briefing room. So Young looked at her team. She had worked with each of them before. They were the best at what they did, and what they did was solve problems that other people said were impossible, Lieutenant. Commander Kim Woo-jin was 35 years old and looked like he had never smiled in his life. He had been Special Forces before joining the Space Navy. His job was simple: get the team where they needed to go and bring them back alive. He was very good at his job. Sergeant Major Lee Yuri was 29 and could build a bomb out of kitchen supplies if needed. She came from a family of engineers and fighters. Her grandmother had been in the resistance during Earth's last big war. Yuri learned early that sometimes you had to break things to fix them. Dr. Choi Hae-won was 38 and understood alien minds better than most aliens understood themselves. She had spent 15 years studying different species across the galaxy. She knew what made them afraid, what made them angry, and what made them surrender. "Ladies and gentlemen," So Young began, "we have a situation. The Villani people on Thesha Prime are under attack by the Korath Empire. The Coalition has asked us to resolve this problem." She pressed a button and the wall screen showed images of Thesha Prime. Beautiful forests filled with tree-like beings living in harmony with nature. Then the images changed to show burning cities and Korath soldiers dragging Villani civilians away in chains. "The Korath have 30 ships in orbit and ground forces on every continent," So Young continued. "They are not just invading. They are processing the population. Some Villani are being kept as workers, others are being used for experiments. The rest are being killed." Yuri leaned forward. "How many Villani are left?" "Unknown. The Korath have been there for 12 hours. At their usual rate, we estimate maybe 2 million survivors out of an original population of 50 million. The room fell silent. Everyone had heard about Korath efficiency. They did not waste time with long sieges or negotiations. They simply took what they wanted and destroyed everything else. "What's our mission?" Wu Jin asked. His voice was calm, but his eyes were hard. "Extract the Villani survivors. Stop the Korath from finishing the job. Send a message that this kind of behavior has consequences." Dr. Hae-won raised her hand. "What are the rules of engagement?" So Young smiled, and it was not a nice smile. "The Coalition said to handle it. They didn't specify how." "So we have full freedom of action?" Yuri asked. "Full freedom," So Young confirmed. "The Coalition knows what we are. They know what we do." "They called us anyway," Wu Jin nodded slowly. "They want us to be ourselves." "Exactly. The Korath understand strength. They respect fear. The Coalition species are too civilized to give them what they understand. We are not." Dr. Hae-won pulled up files on her tablet. "I've been studying Korath psychology for 3 years. They are pack hunters from a high-gravity world. Their society is based on dominance and submission. They believe might makes right. What's their weakness?" So Young asked. "They have never faced a species that is better at violence than they are," Hae-won replied. "Their tactics work because they are usually the most dangerous thing in the room. When that changes, they don't know how to adapt." Yuri grinned. "So we show them what real predators look like." "The Soul's Fury is loaded and ready," Wu Jin reported. "Standard Coalition weapons plus a few human modifications that aren't on any official list." "Good. What's our travel time to Thesha Prime?" 36 hours at maximum speed." So Young stood up. "That gives us 36 hours to plan, Dr. Hae-won. I want to know everything about Korath biology, psychology, and tactics, Yuri, inventory, our weapons, and see what improvements you can make during the trip. Wu Jin, plot the most efficient course and prepare for combat operations." "What about you, Colonel?" Wu Jin asked. "I'm going to think about how to send the right message. The Korath need to understand that what they did to the Villani was a mistake, a big mistake." The team stood up to leave, but So Young called them back. "One more thing. Each of you volunteered for this mission. That means you understand what we might have to do. The Korath don't take prisoners. They don't follow any rules of war. They torture and kill innocent people for entertainment." She looked at each of them in turn. "We are going to stop them. If that means we have to become the thing that scares everyone else, then that's what we do. Are we clear?" "Clear, ma'am," all three replied. 2 hours later, the Soul's Fury lifted off from Earth. To alien observers, it looked like a standard Coalition mid-range vessel. They could not see the modifications hidden inside. Extra armor plating, redundant life support systems, Weapons that could fire in any atmosphere or vacuum. Most importantly, they could not see the crew. Humans who had grown up on a world that tried to kill them every day. Humans who had learned that sometimes the only way to stop a monster was to become a bigger monster. As the ship accelerated toward the jump point, each crew member prepared in their own way. Wu Jin ran combat simulations, testing different approaches to break through the Korath blockade. Yuri worked in the engineering section, turning innocent-looking equipment into weapons of war. Dr. Hay-1 studied Korath communication intercepts, learning their language and their fears. She found something interesting in their recent transmissions. The Korath soldiers on Nesha Prime were getting nervous. They had heard rumors about humans, stories that grew bigger with each telling. So Young sat in her quarters looking at photos of her family. Her brother had died fighting pirates in the Outer Rim 5 years ago. Her parents had raised her to believe that some things were worth fighting for. The protection of innocent people was one of those things. She thought about the Villani, children who were suffering while she traveled through space. She thought about their parents who could not protect them. She thought about the Korath soldiers, who thought they were safe because they had bigger guns. They were about to learn that humans had something more dangerous than big guns. They had the absolute refusal to let evil win. The Soul's Fury jumped to hyperspace, carrying Earth's answer to the Korath Empire. In 34 hours, the Korath would discover what happened when they made humans angry. It would not end well for the Korath. The Soul's Fury dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Nesha Prime system. On the bridge, Lieutenant Commander Wu Jin studied the tactical display with cold eyes. 12 Korath warships hung in orbit around the planet like hungry vultures. Each ship was 3 times the size of his vessel. "Sensor sweep complete," reported the navigation officer. 12 Korath heavy cruisers, all weapons hot. They're maintaining a tight blockade formation. Colonel So Young moved to stand beside Wu Jin's chair. Through the main view screen, she could see Nesha Prime burning. Red spots of fire covered the planet's surface where cities had once stood. The beautiful blue-green world was dying. "Any response to our arrival?" So Young asked. "Yes, ma'am. We're being hailed by the lead Korath vessel." "Put them through." The view screen changed to show a creature that looked like a cross between a rhinoceros and a spider. Its thick armor plating was covered in scars and battle markings. 4 arms ended in clawed hands that drummed impatiently on a command console. Its eyes were small, black, and completely without mercy. "I am War Chief Braxis of the Korath Empire," the creature growled. "You will identify yourself and state your business in our territory." So Young stepped forward. "I am Colonel Park So Young of the Earth Defense Corps. This system is under coalition protection. You will withdraw your forces immediately." Braxis laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Earth Defense Corps? I have heard stories about your kind, human. Soft creatures from a weak world who pretend to be warriors." Behind the war chief, other Korath officers could be seen working at their stations. They were all looking at the human ship with amusement. 1 ship against 12. They probably thought it was some kind of joke. "You have 1 chance to leave peacefully," So Young continued. "Take your ships and go. Leave the Villani in peace. Or—" "What?" Braxis sneered. "You will fight us? 1 small ship against the might of the Korath Empire? You cannot even see properly with those tiny eyes of yours." Wu Jin leaned back in his captain's chair. A thin smile crossed his face. "Colonel, permission to respond?" "Granted." Wu Jin stood up slowly. When he spoke, his voice was calm and quiet. "War Chief Braxis, my name is Kim Wu Jin. I want you to remember that name. Before this day is over, you're going to wish you had never heard it." He paused, letting the words sink in. "As for our eyes, they work just fine. Good enough to see 12 sitting targets pretending to be warships." The bridge of the Korath vessel erupted in angry voices. Several officers started shouting threats. Braxis raised 1 clawed hand for silence. "Brave words from a dead man," the war chief said. "Surrender now, and I will make your death quick. Refuse, and I will turn your ship into scrap metal and feed your crew to my soldiers." Wu Jin's smile grew wider. You know what, War Chief? I've got a better idea. How about you come and take it? The transmission cut to static. On the Souls Fury's bridge, the crew moved with practiced efficiency. They had heard those words before. It was an old Earth phrase that meant the fighting was about to start. All hands to battle stations, So Young announced over the ship's comm system. This is not a drill. We are engaging superior numbers in hostile territory. Remember your training? Remember why we're here. In the engineering section, Sergeant Major Yuri was putting the finishing touches on her preparations. During the journey from Earth, she had turned the ship's mining charges into proximity mines. She had modified the atmospheric processors to create smoke screens. She had even rigged the food replicators to produce chemical compounds that could eat through Korath armor. Engineering ready, Colonel, she reported. All surprises are in place. Dr. Haywan was at her station, monitoring Korath communications. They're coordinating an attack pattern, she reported. Standard Korath pack. Tactics. They'll try to surround us and fire from all directions at once. Let them try, Wujin said. He was already plotting a course through the asteroid belt that surrounded Desha Prime. Are those mines ready? Locked and loaded. Just get me close to those ugly ships. The Korath fleet began to move. Their formation was perfect, designed to trap the human ship in a crossfire from which there could be no escape. What they didn't understand was that humans had been fighting in 3 dimensions since they first climbed trees to escape predators. Wu Jin fired the engines and dove toward the asteroid belt. The Soul's Fury was smaller and faster than the Korath ships. In open space, that wouldn't matter much. But in the crowded maze of spinning rocks and debris, it was everything. First mine deployed, Yuri announced. Second mine deployed. Third mine away. The proximity mines looked like normal space debris to Korath sensors. They drifted innocently between the asteroids, waiting for something big and hostile to come. Close, the lead Korath ship followed the Soul's Fury into the asteroid field. Its captain was confident. Korath ships were heavily armored and armed. A few floating rocks couldn't hurt them. The first mine exploded against the Korath ship's hull. The blast tore through their forward armor and vented atmosphere into space. Emergency alarms began to sound across their bridge. What was that? War Chief Braxis demanded. Unknown explosion, sir, his tactical officer reported. We've lost forward shields and taken hull damage. Find that human ship and destroy it. But the Soul's Fury was already gone, hidden behind a large asteroid. Wu Jin was using every trick he had learned in 20 years of combat flying. The ship twisted and turned through the asteroid field like a fish swimming through coral reefs. 2 more Korath ships entered the field and immediately ran into mines. One lost its main engines. The other had its weapon systems knocked offline. The perfect Korath formation was falling apart. They're adapting, Dr. Haywan warned. They're spreading out, trying to force us into open space. Good, So Young said. That means they're thinking like prey instead of predators. The Soul's Fury emerged from behind a cluster of asteroids and fired everything it had at the nearest. Korath ship? Human weapons were designed to work in any environment. They punched through Korath armor like it was paper, but the real damage came from Dr. Haywan's research. She had discovered that Korath ships had a weakness in their heat management systems. Too much energy discharge would cause their own weapons to overheat and shut down. Target their heat exchangers, she called out. Make them choose between shooting at us and keeping their systems online. The human weapons focused on specific points on the Korath hull. Within minutes, the enemy ship was dead in space, its crew frantically trying to restart their overheated systems. War Chief Braxis watched in growing anger as his superior force was picked apart by one small human ship. This was not how battles were supposed to go. The Korath were the hunters, everyone else was prey. All ships, concentrate fire on Sector 7, he ordered. Destroy everything in that area. 12 Korath ships opened fire at once. The asteroid field lit up with energy beams and missile explosions. Rocks that had floated in space for millions of years were turned to dust in seconds when the firing stopped. There was nothing left in Sector 7 but debris and empty space. Braxis smiled with satisfaction. No ship could survive that kind of firepower. Then the Soul's Fury appeared behind his flagship, rising up from the planet's shadow like a ghost. Wu Jin had used the bombardment as cover to reposition his ship for a perfect attack run. Impossible, Braxis whispered. Target their command bridge, So Young ordered. With pleasure, Yuri replied. The Soul's Fury's weapons tore into the Korth flagship. Braxis felt his ship shake as explosions rippled through the hull. His bridge filled with smoke and the smell of burning electronics. Damage report, he shouted. Engines at 60%. Weapons at 40%. We've lost half our shield generators. Braxis stared at the tactical display. His 12 ships were scattered across the system. 3 were disabled. 2 more were badly damaged, and 1 small human vessel was making them all look like amateurs. Sir, his communications officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from the human ship. Put it through. Colonel So Young appeared on the screen. Her uniform was neat and clean. She looked calm and professional, like she was having a pleasant conversation instead of fighting a space battle. War Chief Braxis, she said politely, I wanted to thank you for the warm welcome. It's been educational. This is not possible. Braxis snarled. You are 1 ship, we are 12. Actually, you're down to 9 functional ships now, So Young corrected. And we're just getting started. You see, War Chief, you made a mistake. You hurt innocent people, you tortured children. You thought nobody would come to stop you. Her expression hardened. You were wrong, the transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Braxis realized something that made his blood run cold. The humans weren't just fighting his ships. They were hunting them, and for the first time in his life, he was the prey. The Soul's Fury descended through Thesha Prime's atmosphere like a falling star. Below them, the planet's surface was a map of destruction. Where once beautiful forests had covered the land, now only burning stumps and ash remained. Smoke rose. From the ruins of cities that had stood for thousands of years, Colonel So Young stood on the bridge, watching the devastation scroll passed on the view screen. Each burned grove represented hundreds of Villani lives lost. Each ruined city meant families torn apart. The Korth had been thorough in their destruction. Landing zone confirmed, Lieutenant Commander Wu Jin reported. 2 kilometers from the last known Villani stronghold. Korth ground forces are concentrated around the perimeter. How many? So Young asked. Approximately 2,000 Korth soldiers, plus armored vehicles and artillery positions. Dr. Haywon looked up from her scanner readings. I'm detecting Villani life signs inside the stronghold? Maybe 15,000 survivors, but the readings are weak. They're running out of time. So Young nodded grimly. 15,000 out of 50 million. The Korth had been even more efficient than usual. She turned to address her team. We're splitting into 2 groups. Wu Jin and Yuri will create diversions to draw Korth forces away from the civilian areas. Dr. Haywon and I will infiltrate the main processing facility to gather intelligence and locate Villani leadership. Sergeant Major Yuri checked her equipment one final time. She carried enough explosives to level a city block, all disguised as standard Coalition field gear. Her backpack contained devices that would make the Korth wish they had stayed home. How big do you want these diversions to be? She asked with a grin. Big enough to get their attention. Small enough that they think they can handle it. I can do that. The ship touched down in a clearing surrounded by the stumps of what had once been giant trees. The landing ramp lowered with a hydraulic hiss. The 4 humans stepped onto the surface of Thesha Prime. The air smelled of smoke and death. In the distance, they could hear the sounds of Korth machinery and the occasional scream of a Villani prisoner. The ground was covered with ash that had once been living wood. Move out, So Young ordered quietly. Wu Jin and Yuri headed north toward the main Korth encampment. Their job was to cause enough trouble to make the Korth commanders think a full Coalition assault force had landed. They carried equipment designed to make a lot of noise and confusion. So Young and Dr. Haywon moved south toward the processing facility. Intelligence reports suggested that was where the Korath were holding their most valuable prisoners. It was also where they conducted their experiments. The facility had been built on the ruins of the Villani capital city. Korath engineers had torn down the beautiful tree buildings and replaced them with ugly metal structures. It was deliberate cruelty, designed to break the spirit of any Villani who saw it. Korath psychology, Dr. Haywan whispered as they approached the outer perimeter. They don't just want to win. They want their enemies to know they've been completely defeated. Well, they're about to learn something about human psychology. So, Young replied. They slipped past the outer guards, using techniques that special forces had perfected over centuries of warfare. The Korath were good soldiers, but they were used to fighting other aliens who approached combat in predictable ways. Humans had learned to fight dirty on a world that gave them no choice. Inside the facility, the true horror of the Korath operation became clear. The main corridor was lined with cells containing Villani prisoners. But these were not ordinary prison cells. They were sorting stations. Signs in Korath writing marked different areas: heavy labor, breeding stock, medical research, and most chilling of all, disposal. Villani beings who looked like walking trees were being examined by Korath scientists. Some were marked with colored tags and sent to different areas. Others were simply dragged away to rooms from which no sounds emerged. Dr. Haywan's face went pale. This isn't just conquest, it's industrial-scale genocide. Keep moving, So Young said through gritted teeth. We need to find their command center. They made their way deeper into the facility. Each room they passed revealed new horrors. Villani, children separated from their parents. Adults subjected to painful medical procedures. Elderly Villani left to die in overcrowded cells without food or water. In one room, they found computers displaying detailed charts and graphs. The Korath were studying optimal caloric intake for slave labor. They were testing how long different age groups could work without rest. They were calculating the most efficient breeding programs to create compliant worker populations. They're not just doing this to the Villani, Dr. Haywan realized as she studied the data. This is a pilot program. They're planning to use these techniques on other species. So Young felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. She had seen war crimes before, but this was different. This was evil refined into a science. They found the central holding area in the deepest part of the facility. Here, in a special containment pod filled with monitoring equipment, was an ancient Villani unlike any they had seen before. His bark-like skin was silver with age, and his branches had been carefully trimmed in patterns that suggested high status. Elder Moran, Dr. Haywan breathed. The spiritual leader of the Villani people. The old being was barely alive. Tubes and wires connected his body to Korath medical equipment. His eyes were closed, but his chest still moved with shallow breathing. So Young examined the monitoring displays. They're keeping him alive for experimentation. They want to understand Villani leadership psychology. Colonel, Dr. Haywan said urgently, we need to get him out of here. He's the key to Villani culture. If he dies, they lose their spiritual center. We'll get him out, So Young promised. All of them. She activated her communicator. Wu Jin, status report. We've got their attention, came the reply through bursts of static. Half the Korath ground forces are chasing us through the forest. Yuri has been creative with her explosives. Good. How long can you keep them busy? As long as you need, Colonel. These Korath fight like they're at a parade ground. No imagination. An explosion echoed through the facility, followed by the sound of running feet and shouting voices. Yuri was apparently being very creative indeed. So Young began working on Elder Moran's containment pod while Dr. Haywan downloaded data from the Korath computers. They needed evidence of what was happening here. The galaxy had to know what the Korath Empire really was. As she worked, So Young spoke quietly to the unconscious Villani elder. I don't know if you can hear me, but my name is Park So Young. I'm from Earth. We got your message. We're here to help. Elder Moran's eyes opened slowly. They were the color of deep forest pools, ancient and wise. When he saw So Young's face, confusion flickered across his features. "Human," he whispered and accented. "But clear coalition standard. I have heard stories. Your people are said to be warriors." "We are," So Young confirmed as she continued working on the restraints. "And we don't like bullies. The Korath. They have done terrible things to my people, to the children, I know. We're going to stop them." Elder Moran studied her face. "With those ancient eyes, you speak with certainty. But there are so many of them, so few of you?" So Young met his gaze directly. "Elder, let me tell you something about humans. We come from a world that spent millions of years trying to kill us. Ice ages, volcanoes, diseases, predators, everything that could go wrong did go wrong on Earth." She freed his arms from the restraints. "We learned that sometimes when something evil threatens innocent people, you don't calculate odds. You don't worry about being outnumbered, you just make sure the evil stops. Even if it costs your lives, especially then." Another explosion shook the facility. This one was much closer. So Young's communicator crackled to life. "Colonel, this is Yuri. I've rigged the main power generator with enough explosives to level half this complex. We can take out their entire operation, but we need to evacuate the prisoners first. How long do we have?" 20 minutes, give or take." So Young helped Elder Moran to his feet. The old Villani was weak, but could walk with support. Dr. HFY 1 had finished copying the Korath data files. "Can you help us find the other prisoners?" So Young asked Elder Moran, the ancient being straightened up despite his pain. "Yes, but there are thousands of them. How can 4 humans evacuate so many?" So Young smiled, and it was the kind of smile that had made Earth's predators learn to hunt in other territories. "Elder, you're about to see why the galaxy calls us crazy. We don't just rescue people. We make sure the ones who hurt them never hurt anyone else again." They began moving through the facility, gathering Villani survivors as they went. Behind them, the sounds of battle grew louder as Yuri's diversions turned into something much more serious. The Korath were about to learn that humans didn't just respond to distress calls. They responded with the kind of justice that left permanent impressions. The Korath facility alarm system screamed through the metal corridors as Colonel So Young led a growing group of Villani survivors toward the exit. Elder Moran walked beside her, his ancient legs growing stronger with each step away from the torture. Chamber, behind them, Dr. HFY 1 helped wounded Villani while keeping watch for Korath guards. "Colonel," Elder Moran said quietly, "there are more prisoners in the lower levels. Children, separated from their parents. The Korath are using them for psychological experiments." So Young stopped walking. Her jaw tightened as she processed this information. Around her, the rescued Villani waited in frightened silence. They had learned to fear sudden stops and angry voices. "How many children?" she asked. "Perhaps 300, maybe more." So Young activated her communicator. "Yuri, what's your status?" "Getting interesting out here, Colonel," came the reply through the sound of explosions. "The Korath are bringing up heavy weapons. Wu Jin and I are keeping them busy, but they're starting to coordinate better. Can you extend the timeline? We have more people to evacuate." "How much more time do you need?" 30 minutes. The comm channel went quiet for a moment. Then Yuri's voice came back, filled with grim determination. "You'll have it, but it's going to get loud. Copy that. Make as much noise as you want. We're done being quiet." So Young turned to Dr. HFY 1. "Get these survivors to the surface. Use the emergency exits we mapped. I'm going after the children. Colonel, you can't go alone. There are too many guards between here and the lower levels. I'm not going alone." So Young looked at Elder Moran. "I assume you know this facility?" "Better than we do?" The ancient Villani's eyes hardened. "Every corridor, every room. They made me watch while they planned their improvements." "Good, Dr. HFY 1. Take the survivors and go. If we're not back in 25 minutes, get everyone to the ship and leave." "Ma'am, I'm not leaving without—" "That's an order, Doctor. Someone needs to get the evidence of what happened here to the Coalition. Those data files are more important than any of our lives." Dr. HFY 1 wanted to argue, but she recognized the tone in So Young's voice. It was the sound of a human who had made a decision that could not be changed. She nodded reluctantly and began leading the survivors toward the surface. So Young and Elder Moran moved deeper into the facility. The lower levels were worse than anything they had seen above. The Korath had turned the basement into a laboratory for studying fear and despair. Each room contained equipment designed to measure psychological responses to various forms of torment. "Here," Elder Moran whispered, pointing to a heavy door marked with Korath symbols. "The children are in there." Through the door's window, So Young could see dozens of young Villani huddled together in a large cell. They looked like saplings that had been cut down before they could grow. Their natural green coloring had faded to a sickly yellow. Many showed signs of medical procedures. "Stand back," So Young told Elder Moran. She pulled out a device that Yuri had given her, something that looked like a standard Coalition scanner but had been modified in ways that would make weapons inspectors very unhappy. She placed it against the door's locking mechanism and activated it. The lock melted. "Human engineering," she explained to Elder Moran's surprised look. "We have a saying, if you can't find a key, make a bigger door." The children shrank back as the door opened, expecting more Korath guards. Instead, they saw a human female in military uniform and an elderly Villani they recognized. "Elder Moran!" One of the children called out, "Yes, little ones, I am here. And I have brought help." Elder Moran stepped into the cell. "This is Colonel So Young. She is from the human homeworld. She has come to take us home." The children looked at So Young with a mixture of hope and fear. They had heard the adult Villani talking about humans in whispers. Some said humans were monsters. Others said they were protectors. Looking at So Young's calm face and gentle eyes, they decided she must be one of the protectors. "We need to move quickly," So Young told them. "Stay close to Elder Moran and do exactly what he says. Can you do that?" The children nodded. Even the youngest seemed to understand that this was their only chance. They began moving through the facility's corridors. So Young took point, using sensors to detect Korath guards before they could spot the group. Elder Moran brought up the rear, making sure no child fell behind. As they climbed toward the surface levels, the sounds of battle grew louder. Yuri was apparently making good on her promise to be loud. Explosions shook the building every few minutes, and Korath voices could be heard shouting orders in panic. They were almost to the surface when they encountered their first group of guards. 6 Korath soldiers came around a corner, weapons raised. When they saw the escaping prisoners, they began to raise their guns. They never got the chance to fire. So Young moved like nothing the Korath had ever seen. She was fast, precise, and completely without mercy. In less than 10 seconds, all 6 guards were down. The children stared in amazement. They had never seen anyone fight like that. "Stay close," So Young repeated calmly, as if nothing had happened. They reached the surface to find chaos. The entire Korath compound was under attack by what appeared to be a full military assault. Explosions lit up the night sky. Buildings collapsed as their support structures were targeted with surgical precision. Korath vehicles burned like giant torches, but there were only 2 humans causing all this destruction. Lieutenant Commander Wujin had brought the Soul's Fury down to ground level and was using it as a mobile weapons platform. The ship darted between buildings like a hunting bird, striking Korath positions and disappearing before return fire could find it. Sergeant Major Yuri had turned the compound's own infrastructure against its occupants. Power lines became electrified. Barriers, fuel depots became massive bombs. Even the water system had been weaponized somehow. Several Korath positions were flooding with liquid that burned when it touched their armor. "This way." So Young directed the children toward a rally point she had established with Dr. Hay-1. They could see other groups of Villani survivors moving in the same direction, guided by human-made signals that were invisible to Korath sensors. As they walked, Elder Moran spoke quietly to So Young. "Your people are remarkable warriors, but there are still thousands of Korath soldiers on this planet. How can 4 humans defeat so many?" We're not trying to defeat them all, So Young replied. We're trying to save you, but... She paused as another explosion lit up the sky. A Korath command post had just ceased to exist. But the Korath have made this personal. They hurt children, they turn torture into a science. They need to understand that actions have consequences. What kind of consequences? So Young's expression hardened. The kind that make sure they never do this again. To anyone, they reached the rally point to find Dr. Haywan coordinating the evacuation of nearly 2,000 Villani survivors. Somehow, the rescue operation had grown from saving 15,000 to actually evacuating everyone who was still alive. Colonel, Dr. Haywan reported, we have a problem. There are too many survivors to fit in our ship. We need more transport. We'll use their ships, So Young said simply. Ma'am, the Korath brought transport vessels to carry slaves. We'll use those same ships to carry free Villani to safety. Elder Moran looked amazed. You would steal Korath ships? Elder, we're not stealing them. We're repurposing them for humanitarian aid? There's a difference. Yuri's voice came over the communicator. Colonel, I've rigged the main Korath barracks with enough explosives to be seen from orbit. On your word, I can eliminate their entire ground force command structure. Wait for my signal. We need to get our people clear first. As the evacuation continued, So Young watched the Korath forces try to reorganize. They were good soldiers, but they were used to fighting enemies who followed conventional military tactics. They had never faced an opponent who treated war as a form of problem-solving. Humans didn't just fight to win. They fought to send messages. And the message they were sending to the Korath Empire was very clear. Hurt innocent people, and we will hunt you across the galaxy. All survivors aboard transport ships, Dr. Haywan reported. We're ready for departure. So Young activated her communicator. Wu Jin, take the Villani to safe distance. Yuri, you have permission to light up the night? Copy that, Colonel. This is for the children. The explosions that followed could indeed be seen from orbit. The entire Korath complex disappeared in a series of carefully choreographed detonations that turned their military headquarters into a crater, but So Young wasn't done yet. She opened a communication channel to the surviving Korath forces. Attention. Korath Empire forces. This is Colonel Park So Young of the Earth Defense Corps. Your compound has been destroyed. Your commanders are dead. Your mission has failed. She paused, letting her words sink in. You have a choice. Leave this system immediately and never return or share the fate of your command structure. You have 1 hour to decide. The response came quickly. War Chief Braxis himself appeared on the screen, his scarred face twisted with rage. You think you have won, human? This is one battle. The Korath Empire spans 1,000 worlds. We will return with a fleet that will darken your skies, So Young smiled. It was not a nice smile. War Chief, let me tell you something about humans. We don't fight wars to win battles. We fight? War Chief Braxis stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his ground forces evacuate from Thesha Prime. The reports coming in were impossible to believe. 4 humans had destroyed his entire planetary operation. Thousands of Korath soldiers were retreating from a handful of creatures from a distant world. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving urgent messages from the homeworld. News of what happened here is spreading through the Empire. What kind of messages? Panic, sir. Other fleet commanders are asking for advice on fighting humans. Some are requesting permission to withdraw from sectors near Coalition space. Braxis felt his 4 hands clench into fists. The Korath Empire ruled through fear and reputation. If word spread that humans could defeat them so easily, their enemies would grow bold, rebellions would start. Their carefully built empire would crumble. Send a message to the homeworld, he ordered. Tell them I am handling the human problem personally. Down on the planet's surface, Colonel So Young watched the Korath evacuation through her binoculars. The enemy soldiers were loading onto transport ships as fast as they could manage. They kept looking over their shoulders as if expecting more explosions at any moment. They're scared, Lieutenant Commander Wu Jin observed. I've never seen Korath retreat this quickly. Good, So Young replied. Fear makes people make mistakes, and we're going to need them to make mistakes. Sergeant Major Yuri was studying sensor readings from the orbiting Korath fleet. Even after the ground defeat, there were still 9 warships up there. Each one carried enough firepower to glass the entire planet. Colonel, they're not leaving. She reported, the fleet is maintaining orbit. I think they're planning something. Dr. Haywon looked up from her medical scanner. She had been checking the rescued Villani children for injuries and psychological trauma. The children are physically stable, but they're terrified the Korath will come back. They keep asking if the bad aliens will hurt them again. So Young felt something cold settle in her chest. These children had already suffered enough. The idea that they were still afraid, still looking over their shoulders, made her angry in a way that was hard to describe. Wujin, can we get the Soul's Fury back into orbit? Yes, ma'am. But 1 ship against 9 is still bad odds, even for us. We're not going to fight 9 ships, So Young said quietly. We're going to fight 1 ship 9 times. Elder Moran approached their group, moving slowly but with dignity. The ancient Villani had recovered much of his strength during the evacuation. More importantly, he had recovered his hope. Colonel So Young, he said formally, I must ask you something difficult. What is it, Elder? The Korath will return. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but they will come back. They cannot allow this defeat to stand without response. When they return, they will bring more ships, more soldiers. So Young nodded. You're probably right. Then why are you still here? You have saved my people. You have done more than anyone could ask. You could leave now, return to your own worlds, and be safe. Because that's not how humans work, Elder. We don't solve problems halfway. I don't understand, So Young pointed up at the Korath ships. Those ships up there, they're not just a threat to you. They're a threat to every peaceful species in this part of the galaxy. The Korath will find another world like yours. Another. People who can't defend themselves. And they'll do the same things they did here. She turned to face Elder Moran directly. We can't let that happen. But you are only 4 people against an entire empire? Elder, let me tell you something about being outnumbered. Humans have been outnumbered before. Our entire species was almost wiped out by ice ages, diseases, and predators that were bigger and stronger than us. Do you know what we learned from that? Elder Moran shook his head. We learned that it doesn't matter how big the enemy is. It doesn't matter how many of them there are. What matters is that somebody has to stand up and say, no more. Today, that somebody is us. Above them, the Korath fleet began to move. The ships were taking new positions around the planet. It looked like they were preparing for orbital bombardment. They're going to destroy the surface, Dr. Haywon said, reading the tactical displays. Even with the Villani evacuated, they want to make sure nothing survives. No, So Young said firmly. They're not. She activated her communicator and opened a channel to the Korath flagship. War Chief Braxis appeared on the screen, his scarred face twisted with rage. Human, he snarled. You have interfered with Korath business for the last time. I'm going to turn this planet into glass, and then I'm going to hunt down every human in Coalition space. War Chief, So Young replied calmly, I have a counteroffer. You are in no position to make offers. Single combat? The words hung in the air between them. On the Korath bridge, officers stopped what they were doing to stare at their commander. Single combat was an ancient Korath tradition, but no enemy had invoked it in centuries. What did you say? Braxis asked. You heard me, single combat, your flagship against my ship. Winner takes all? If you win, we leave and never interfere with. Korath business again. If I win, your fleet withdraws and never returns to this system. Braxis laughed, but it sounded forced. You would stake everything on one battle, your ship against mine? I would. Why? So Young's expression hardened. Because I've seen what you do to children. I've seen your torture chambers. I've seen your experiments. Someone needs to stop you, and today that someone is me. The Korath war chief studied her face through the screen. He had been fighting for 30 years. He had conquered dozens of worlds. He had never met an enemy who volunteered to face impossible odds. "If I accept," he said slowly, "and I defeat you, will the other humans avenge your death?" "Probably. But that's not your immediate problem." "What is my immediate problem?" So Young smiled. It was the kind of smile that had made Earth's apex predators learn to hunt elsewhere. "Your immediate problem is that you're about to fight a human who's angry about what you did to innocent children and war chief. We don't lose those fights." The communication ended. On the Korath flagship, Braxis turned to his officers. They were all looking at him with expressions he had never seen before. It took him a moment to recognize what he was seeing. They were afraid. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "perhaps we should call for reinforcements. Fighting humans seems to require different tactics than—" "Silence," Braxis roared. "I am war chief of the Korath Empire. I have conquered more worlds than this human has seen years of life. I will not be intimidated by a single enemy ship." But even as he said the words, he felt something he had not experienced in decades: doubt. The soul's fury rose from the planet's surface like an avenging angel. Its hull showed scars from the recent battles, but its weapons were fully charged, and its crew was ready for war. On the bridge, Lieutenant Commander Wu Jin ran final systems checks. All weapons online, engines at full power, hull integrity at 96%. "Yuri, what surprises do we have left?" So Young asked. "I've been saving the best for last, Colonel. Remember those mining charges we've been using? I've figured out how to overload their containment fields. If I can get close enough to their ship, I can create an explosion that will crack their hull like an egg." "How close is close enough?" "Ramming distance." The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood what Yuri was suggesting. It was a suicide mission disguised as a tactical maneuver. "There has to be another way," Dr. Hay-One said. "There is," So Young replied. "We can let the Korath bomb this planet and then hunt down more innocent people on the next world, and the world after that." She stood up and walked to the main view screen. The Korath flagship hung in space ahead of them, massive and threatening. But for the first time since the battle began, it was alone. Braxis had ordered the other ships to stay back and watch the single combat. "Wu Jin, take us in." "Yuri, prepare your surprise." Dr. Hay-One, send a message to Coalition Command. "Tell them what we found here. Tell them what the Korath really are." "What?" "About you, Colonel," Wu Jin asked. "I'm going to have a conversation with War Chief Braxis about the consequences of hurting children." The Soul's fury accelerated toward the Korath flagship. Behind them, Vesha Prime turned slowly in space, its surface scarred but healing. The Villani survivors in the transport ships watched through viewports as their human protectors flew. Toward what looked like certain death, Elder Moran pressed his ancient hand against the transparent metal. "Fly well, brave humans," he whispered. "The children are counting on you." In space, two ships closed the distance between them. One represented an empire built on cruelty and fear. The other carried 4 humans who had decided that some things were worth dying to stop. The battle that would determine the fate of the Korath Empire was about to begin. The Soul's Fury and the Korath flagship circled each other in the darkness of space, like two ancient predators meeting for the first time. War Chief Braxis watched the human ship through his view screen, trying to understand how something so small could have caused so much damage. "Sir," his weapons officer reported, "the human ship is maintaining distance." "They're not attacking, they're studying us," Braxis realized. "Just like we studied the Villani before we conquered them?" On the Soul's Fury's bridge, Colonel So Young was indeed studying her enemy. Dr. Hay-One had provided detailed analysis of Korath ship design, and Yuri had identified several critical weak points. But this wasn't just about finding vulnerabilities. This was about sending a message that would echo across the galaxy. "Wu Jin, open a channel to all Korath ships. I want the entire fleet to hear this. Channel open, Colonel." So Young stood in front of the main view screen, her uniform neat and her expression calm. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who had never backed down from a righteous fight. War Chief Braxis, I want you to understand something before we begin. This isn't just about the Villani. This isn't just about one planet or one species. This is about a choice your empire made. What choice? Braxis snarled. You chose to believe that might makes right. You chose to torture children for science. You chose to turn genocide into an industrial process. And most importantly, you chose to do it in a galaxy where humans exist. She paused, letting her words sink in. That was a mistake. You speak of mistakes, human? You are one ship against an empire of thousands of worlds. War Chief, let me tell you about humans and empires. Throughout our history, we've faced enemies who outnumbered us, outgunned us, and thought they were better than us. Empires that believed they were destined to rule over others. So Young's expression hardened. Those empires don't exist anymore. The battle began without ceremony. The Korath flagship opened fire with everything it had, filling space with energy beams and missiles. The Soul's fury danced between the attacks like a fighter dodging punches from a giant lieutenant. Commander Wu Jin flew the ship like he was still in the Special Forces, using every trick he had learned in 20 years of combat. The Soul's fury twisted and rolled through three-dimensional space, never staying in one place long enough for Korath weapons to lock on. Their firing pattern is predictable, Dr. Haywan observed, analyzing the enemy's tactics. They're used to fighting enemies who can't maneuver like we can. That's because they've never fought anyone from a deathworld, Sergeant Major Yuri replied. She was preparing her final surprise, the overloaded mining charges that could crack the Korath hull. On Earth, if you can't dodge, you die. The Soul's fury returned fire, targeting specific systems on the Korath flagship. Human weapons were precise, designed to disable rather than destroy when necessary. But precision could be just as deadly as brute force. The first hits took out the Korath ship's forward shields. The second volley disabled their main engines. The third destroyed their primary weapons array. Impossible, Braxis whispered, watching his ship's systems fail one by one. We are Korath. We are the apex predators of this galaxy. Not anymore, his tactical officer said quietly. The Soul's fury moved in closer, dodging the Korath ship's remaining weapons. Wu Jin flew with the kind of precision that came from growing up on a world where a single mistake meant death. Yuri, are you ready? So Young asked. Ready, Colonel. But I need to get right next to their hull. And once I deploy the charges, we'll have maybe 30 seconds to get clear. Do it! The Soul's fury accelerated toward the Korath flagship in what looked like a suicide run. Braxis watched in amazement as the human ship came straight at him, ignoring the weapons fire that filled the space around it. They're going to ram us, his pilot shouted. Evasive maneuvers. But the damaged Korath ship was too slow. The Soul's fury came alongside the flagship's hull, so close that the two ships were almost touching. Yuri deployed her surprise. The overloaded mining charges attached to the Korath hull like metal parasites. They began cutting through the armor plating with focused energy beams, heading for the ship's critical systems. Pull away. So Young ordered. Wu Jin fired the engines at full power, pushing the Soul's fury away from the Korath flagship just as Yuri's charges reached their targets. The explosion that followed lit up space like a small star. The Korath flagship's hull cracked open, venting atmosphere and debris into the void. Emergency alarms screamed through the dying ship as sections lost power and life support. War Chief Braxis found himself on the floor of his bridge, surrounded by sparking electronics and the groans of wounded officers. His ship was dying around him, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Damage report, he called out. Hull breach in 17 sections, his engineer reported with difficulty. Main power offline, life support failing. We have maybe 10 minutes before total system failure. Braxis pulled himself to his feet and looked at the view screen. The Soul's fury hung in space nearby, battered but intact. Its weapons were pointed at his ship, but they weren't firing. A communication channel opened. Colonel So Young appeared. On the screen, her face calm and professional. War Chief Braxis, she said, Your ship is dying. Your crew is dying. But I'm going to give you something you never gave the Villani, a choice. What choice? Braxis asked through gritted teeth. Surrender. Order your fleet to withdraw from this system and never return. Send a message to your empire telling them what happened here. Make sure they understand that hunting innocent people has consequences. And if I refuse, then you die with your ship and I explain to your fleet what happened? Either way, the message gets sent. Braxis looked around his ruined bridge. His officers were watching him, waiting for his decision. For the first time in his life, he was completely defeated. Not just militarily, but psychologically. The humans had broken something inside him that he didn't even know existed. What guarantee do I have that you won't hunt down the rest of my fleet? You don't, So Young replied honestly. But I'll tell you what I told Elder Moran. Humans don't fight wars to win battles. We fight wars to solve problems. If your fleet leaves and never comes back, the problem is solved. And if we return? So Young's expression became colder than space itself. War Chief, look around your bridge. Look at what 4 humans did to your entire invasion force. Now imagine what happens when Earth decides you're a problem that needs permanent solving. The communication channel went quiet while Braxis considered his options. Around him, his ship continued to die. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows on the walls. The sound of escaping atmosphere echoed through the corridors. Sir, his communications officer said weakly, the other ships are requesting orders. They want to know if they should attack the human vessel. Braxis closed his eyes. In his mind, he could see the burning Korith compound on Desha Prime. He could see his soldiers retreating in panic from 4 humans. He could see his flagship broken and dying from weapons. He didn't understand. He opened his eyes and activated the ship-wide communication system. All Korith vessels, this is War Chief Braxis. We are withdrawing from this system immediately. Set. Course for the homeworld. Maximum speed. Sir? His second-in-command asked in confusion. You heard me, we're leaving. But the humans won. The words tasted like poison in his mouth, but they were true. They defeated us completely. And if we stay, they'll do it again. The Korith fleet began to withdraw, their ships disappearing one by one into hyperspace. As the last enemy vessel jumped away, the Soul's Fury remained in orbit around Desha Prime, making sure they were really gone. Colonel, Dr. Hay-1 reported, I'm receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. News of what happened here is spreading through the coalition networks. What kind of reactions? Mixed. Some species are celebrating. Others are worried about human military capabilities. But there's something else. We're getting requests for help from other worlds that are under threat. So Young nodded slowly. She had expected this. Word would spread that humans were willing to fight for innocent people. Other species would call for help when their own governments couldn't protect them. Send a message to Earth Command, she ordered. Tell them we're going to need more ships. 3 days later, the rescued Villani were settled on a coalition refugee world where they could heal and rebuild their civilization. Elder Moran had recovered enough to serve as their leader again, and the children were starting to show signs of their natural green coloring, returning. Lieutenant Commander Wu Jin received a promotion and command of his own ship, the first of a new class of vessels, designed specifically for rapid response to humanitarian crises. Yuri was offered a teaching position at the Coalition Military Academy, where her course on creative problem-solving in combat situations became legendary. Dr. Hay-1 established a research institute dedicated to studying and preventing genocide across the galaxy. Her first project was a comprehensive database of Korith war crimes, ensuring that the galaxy would remember what had happened on Desha Prime. Colonel So Young received the Coalition's highest honor for military service, but she also received something more meaningful, a message from the Villani children. They had learned enough Coalition standard to write